I'm not supposed to be here tonight. Not supposed to be here. I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God.
Tonight, how did a gunman get a clear shot at a former president?
He's going down! Down.
People have seen him climb up on the roof with a rifle, and people's pointing at him.
Officer, we have...
Only on NewsNation, inside the investigation into the assassination attempt that shocked the world.
Republican and Democrat are not receiving answers.
Was this a colossal failure, yes or no? Yes.
The plot to kill Donald Trump starts right now. 12 days ago on these farm show grounds, former President Donald Trump was shot at his rally. Time stopped, the entire country was in shock, and everyone is still, tonight, looking for answers. Hey everybody, I'm Brian Enton, live tonight in Butler, Pennsylvania for this NewsNation special report. This was the first assassination attempt on a sitting or former president in 43 years. So for the next hour, we're going to try and answer some of the questions about exactly what happened. How did the Secret Service fail so badly? Why was President Trump allowed to take the stage when they knew that there was a suspicious person out there in the crowd? How did the gunman get on the roof with so many officers around? What was the motive, and who signed off on the Secret Service plan? We might not be the biggest news team out here, but I can promise you that we are the hardest working. We're scrappy. We've worked around the clock for 12 days straight, working our sources here on the ground in Butler, working our sources in D.C., knocking on doors, pounding the pavement. We are all in, and we're going to tell you everything that we found out. But first, a look at the shooting and how it unfolded, not the little clips like you've seen for the last couple of weeks, but the full picture of what happened 12 days ago, right here. July 13th, departing on a trip that would shake a nation.
Very lively environment.
Very lively. Everybody just couldn't wait, just anticipated him coming.
In Butler, Pennsylvania, the crowd is also gathering.
Going around.
5:51 p.m., Pennsylvania State Police notify the Secret Service a man is spotted on the ground with a rangefinder. He's lost in the crowd. A minute later, 5:52, Secret Service agents shared the report with their sniper team and ground agents. At this point, law enforcement is unaware the man has a gun.
Please welcome the next president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump.
11 minutes later, 6:03, the 45th president of the United States takes the stage.
This is a big crowd. This is a big, beautiful crowd.
6:09, as Donald Trump is speaking, spectators alert officers. A gunman is on the roof.
There he is right there. Right there, see him?
Gray shirt, climbing up the metal roof on the building right beside us. And didn't know what he was doing, trying to alert cops and police.
2 minutes later, 6:11 and 21 seconds, a local officer is seen walking along the edge of the building.
Officer,
Chaos, more people yelling that a man presents a grave danger, desperate to share what they're seeing.
He's going down!
Others fleeing. One of the Secret Service sniper teams has changed positions and appears to spot something, just moments before the first shot is heard.
If you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Finish there. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Up. Move. Go. Up. Hawkeye's here. Hawkeye's here. Move it to the stand. Stair, get ready. Stair, get ready. We ready? Are we good? Shooters down. Are we good to move?
Clear.
Let's move. Let's move.
We're clear.
Come on.
Let me get my shoes.
I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes on.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus. Let me get my shoes.
Okay, shoes down.
Watch out.
Wait.
Let's go back to the exact moment. The gunman fires, an echo is heard.
Take a look at what happened. Take a look what happened.
A second shot, and then as the third comes, Trump getting to the ground. 10 seconds later, as the Secret Service covers Donald Trump, there are more screams. Law enforcement crosses the stage.
Move it there. Hold. When you're ready. On you. Ready. Move. Up. Move. Go. Up. Shooters down. Are we good to move?
We're clear.
Let's move. Let's move.
We're clear.
I got you, sir.
Let me get my shoes on.
Hold that in your head. It's bloody.
So we got to move to the bus.
And with a composure documented for the ages, Donald Trump urges his supporters to fight. The crowd is discovering others have been hit. Corey Comparator is dead. The former fire chief and father dove on top of his family, saving their lives, but losing his. James Koppenhaver, 74, and David Dutch, 57, critically wounded. 2.5 minutes after shots fired, Trump's huddle whisks him from the scene.
USA! USA! USA!
The entire drama playing out live on NewsNation.
That is remarkable. You have just witnessed history live from this Trump event. This is a Trump campaign event just days from the RNC. Former President Trump potentially hit by gunfire. We have to confirm, but he is still raising his arm in what looks to be courage, confidence, saying that he's okay to that crowd.
The protective column of his detail makes its way to Butler Memorial Hospital that's being cleared to triage the unthinkable. A Trump rally goer seeking treatment for heat exposure, seeing armed agents, discovering what's happening.
We're front row, and my friend saw blood coming out of his head.
Oh my God.
There he is. There he is. There he is.
Oh, thank God.
He's walking. He's walking.
8:50 p.m., doctors finish treating Donald Trump, and he heads to the airport in Pittsburgh. His life-altering day ending just the way it began, with Donald Trump on the campaign trail. His team posting this video a mere 6+ hours after the shooting, touching down in New Jersey. And just after dawn Sunday morning, Trump addressed his supporters on Truth Social, thanking them for the prayers and thanking God.
I stand before you in this arena only by the grace of Almighty God.
At the Republican National Convention, President Trump relived what it was like in that moment.
There was blood pouring everywhere, and yet, in a certain way, I felt very safe because I had God on my side. I raised my right arm, looked at the thousands and thousands of people that were breathlessly waiting and started shouting, "Fight, fight, fight."
Okay, so that was the minute-by-minute breakdown, which just sort of hits you a different way when you see the entire thing. But the big question is, what actually went wrong? The short answer we've realized is a lot. We've been pounding the pavement for the last 12 days here in Butler, Pennsylvania. Wait until you see what we found. Why officers were not on the roof. What led to a massive breakdown in communications? Why does every law enforcement agency have a different version of what happened, even 12 days later? And why is it so hard to get to the truth on this one? The answers to all of those questions coming up right after this. Welcome back. I'm Brian Enton, live from Butler, Pennsylvania. 20 minutes, that is all it was, between Secret Service agents learning of a suspicious man and shots fired. What unfolded here in Butler has now sparked investigations, congressional hearings. The head of the Secret Service resigned after admitting it was a failure, and it was a failure. The former president was nearly killed. A father lost his life. Another man is still fighting for his life right now. That is why it is so important to figure out exactly what went wrong. Was it preparation and planning, execution? Was it both? Here's what we found out. Now that the FBI is cleared out, we're able to get on the farm show grounds where the rally happened. Where I'm standing right now is pretty much exactly where former President Trump was when he was shot. It's eerie being out here, knowing what happened, knowing that a man lost his life close to here, 2 people seriously injured. But perhaps what is most striking is that the building right there, that the gunman was able to climb up on top of and fire those shots, that it's so close to where I'm standing, only about 400 feet away. The law enforcement failures did not just begin the day of the Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. They began weeks before. A law enforcement source tells NewsNation the security plan developed by the Secret Service was flawed. A source says the building the gunman climbed on top of to shoot President Trump was supposed to be secured by local police. And there was even a star on the plan explicitly indicating it was the local police department that was responsible for securing the building, despite it being so close to where the president was speaking. The sources tell NewsNation the Secret Service did not show up for the final planning meeting, and their perimeter was too small. Butler Township Police Department is a small department. There's only about 12 full-time officers, and we've learned that they're short-staffed. The chief retired, and there's actually a lieutenant in charge right now. And sources close to the department tell us that they were shocked when they found out they wouldn't be doing traffic for the former president's event, but instead would be in charge of securing the building. Staffing concerns have come up again and again. The Trump campaign had asked the Secret Service for beefed up security in the past, and NewsNation has learned the day of the rally, the Secret Service requested an additional police unit outside the building, but Butler Township said they didn't have one. And during the rally, a source says the local police officers were inside the building, not keeping an eye on the roof. Both federal and local sources agree that local officers were on the roof briefly, but because of the heat, moved down to the ground. Another team of local officers was doing surveillance from inside the building through a window. Sources have said since the beginning that there were communication issues, but it appears it's even worse than we realized. The House Committee on Homeland Security says they've discovered that the Secret Service and local police were not even able to communicate over their radios.
And normally, they put a person from the locals in the Secret Service area. Today, the locals shared with us that they were not allowed to have anybody in there. So that makes you want to dig a little further, right? And in terms of radio communications, from what we could tell today, and we need to get some clarity, some granularity on this, there was very limited communication between the locals or the outer perimeter and the inner perimeter.
There he is. It appears it was people at the rally who spotted the gunman even before police. When did you first notice the shooter?
We noticed the shooter because people to my left of us the guys were talking that they were seeing someone on the rooftop.
A minute or two before the shooting, saw a guy, gray shirt, climbing up the metal roof on the building right beside us. And didn't know what he was doing, trying to alert cops and police that there was a guy crawling on the roof. And then we saw a rifle sling over his shoulder.
I don't know why they were waiting so long to take this guy out, but they were positioned doing what they were doing, and we went on listening to Donald Trump speak.
So why didn't the Secret Service snipers take out the gunman before he started firing? NewsNation obtaining this photo with a timestamp of 6:04 p.m., 7 minutes before the shooting, and you see snipers looking in the direction of the gunman. We also obtained a photo from 5:41, even earlier, that shows snipers looking at the roof. Sources within the Secret Service say the working theory right now is the sniper did not initially shoot Thomas Crooks because the sniper thought Crooks was a police officer on the roof, which makes sense considering the original security plan indicated a local police officer was supposed to be securing the roof.
Okay, and then this is his bike with the stuff.
But still, so many warning signs were missed. Body camera video after the shooting shows the confusion on the roof where Secret Service and local police talk near the dead gunman.
So this is the guy
yes, that they sent yes, Beaver County sniper scene and sent the pictures out. This is him.
Okay, all right.
We're right there, all of a sudden.
Got it. So the bike in the back, is he on that bike?
We don't know.
We don't know. So
I
we're
don't
just
know.
treating that as suspicious device.
A congressional source briefed on the matter tells NewsNation the shooter visited the rally site a few days before to scope it out. He initially set off a metal detector at the rally because he had a rangefinder. The source says 62 minutes elapsed between the time the shooter was photographed as being suspicious and when he fired the shots. And 20 minutes elapsed between the time he was spotted by snipers and when he fired the shots.
On July 13th, we failed.
The Secret Service director says they were told about a suspicious person 2 to 5 times before the shooting, but had no indication he had a weapon. And we know he even flew a drone over the site ahead of the rally. The big question, how is it possible it was members of the public who spotted Crooks with a gun even before federal and local law enforcement?
People were staring and showing us that there seemed to be a figurine or somebody on one of the roofs to the left of us.
Sources tell NewsNation one of the biggest issues is that the security perimeter established by the Secret Service was too small and not secure. NewsNation obtaining this photo that shows people outside the perimeter partying along the fence line during the rally. Some experts argue that allowing spectators to be so close to the fence with an eye shot of the president shows just how lax security was. And all the experts we've talked to were disturbed by that photo, wondering why people would be allowed to be right up against the fence so close to the president. A lot of issues there. Okay, so coming up, there's been finger pointing from the Secret Service. There's been finger pointing from local cops. We're trying to get answers. Why are they telling different versions of what happened, even in front of Congress? The Pennsylvania State Police colonel, he testified yesterday and said that they left.
Right, he's wrong.
He's wrong about that. So who is telling the truth? We keep digging. Stay with us. Welcome back. I'm Brian Enton, live in Butler, Pennsylvania for this NewsNation special report. So after all of the chaos, there is now quickly a demand for consequences. Remember, it's been more than 40 years since something like this has happened. And for some of us, it's the first time in our lifetime. It sparked multiple investigations, including the FBI, Homeland Security, and also Congress. And as part of that investigation, the House Oversight Committee brought now former Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle to the Hill, where they grilled her for hours and hours over key questions about the assassination attempt. Both Democrats and Republicans, they were frustrated by her responses. We summed up most of her answers. Take a look.
I would have to refer you to the FBI's investigation for motive. Again, I would have to defer you to the FBI. I'm still waiting for interviews from the FBI. I believe that the FBI is still looking into that on their investigation.
All right. We got a lot of those answers. She did not say much at all, barely any new information from the person in charge of the security plan. And you can imagine how well that went over with the people who subpoenaed her to be there.
But there were sufficient resources
what did you just
that
say?
were given to.
Did you just say there were
former
sufficient
presidents.
resources?
President Trump got shot. Someone got killed.
If you're supposed to be in charge, if the buck stops with you, how come you can't share the answers? What are you covering up?
The fact that you can't answer how many times you did that, that's pretty darn frustrating, not just for me, but for the country.
I would have to get back to you.
That is a no. You're full of today. You're just being completely dishonest. Mr. Chairman.
All right, they were not happy, but Cheadle did admit to members of Congress that this was a colossal failure and took responsibility for the security lapses. And then a day later, she resigned. But the House Oversight Committee, they were not done. They brought the head of Pennsylvania State Police, Colonel Christopher Paris. They brought him all the way to Washington, and he shared this very important piece of information about the officers stationed at the window that many believe had a sight line to the shooter on the roof. Listen to this carefully.
To your knowledge, those ESU officers left the location where they could look out the window to go in search of this person?
That is my understanding.
Sometime between the time he was spotted on the ground and identified as someone suspicious until the shooting, they had left that post to go look for him. Is that what you're saying?
My understanding is yes, along with other municipal officers that responded to that area.
Listen, that's pretty major. It stood out most to me out of everything he said in that testimony. Officers leaving their post. The issue now, though, is the Butler County District Attorney told me exclusively that that is not true. I mean, we're 12 days from what could have been a world-altering attack. A man died, and authorities cannot even agree on the same key details of those 20 minutes at the rally. It has Butler County District Attorney Richard Goldinger all fired up. Take a listen to what I learned in my exclusive sit-down with him. The Pennsylvania State Police Colonel, he testified yesterday and said that they left.
Right, he's wrong.
He's wrong about that.
He's wrong about that.
Because he said that when they spotted him, that they left to go look for him, and that's why the roof wasn't covered.
No, that's not true. They stayed where they were. They could not see where he was located when he was on the roof. Their vantage point was they would literally had to have been leaning out the window looking over to where he was located. But they were still where they were supposed to be. And they couldn't find him. He had walked around the building and they had called it in. So they didn't leave their posts. I don't know why he said that. But I
mean, that was a pretty serious thing to say to Congress.
Well, yeah, it was. And I'm not saying he wasn't telling it. I mean, maybe he was told that and that's what he believes happened. But that's not what happened. They did not leave. They just couldn't see where he was from where they were. The vantage point did not permit them to see where he was shooting from.
Yeah, it seemed like almost immediately the finger pointing started. We were hearing from Secret Service sources that it was the local law enforcement's fault. Local law enforcement was afraid to talk, but, on the defensive. What do you make of that? I mean, is it the local police that dropped the ball, or is it the feds?
I don't think, it was not the local police or the local law enforcement that dropped the ball. They had specific duties assigned to them by the Secret Service. They performed those duties. And so I'm not pointing the finger at Secret Service. I'm not pointing the finger at the state police. I'm just saying that somewhere along the way somebody made a mistake. But I'm telling you that local law enforcement, who was there volunteering their time, they weren't paid. They were there volunteering their time, risking their lives for the former president. And they were where they were supposed to be, where they were told to be.
Which was the building?
Well, they had several locations where they were assigned to be. One of those locations was a building that was out in that area where the shooting occurred, but where those two people were located, and they never left their post. They were there the entire time. They were not, from their vantage point, they were not able to see where the shooter was.
Yeah, it's our understanding that they were on a second floor looking out a window.
Correct.
Why weren't they on the roof?
Well, I don't know the answer to that. That would not. They would have been where they were told to be. So I don't know why they weren't on the roof, but they were supposed to be in that second floor at those windows.
Are you surprised that the Secret Service put local law enforcement in charge of a building so close to the former president, so close with direct line of sight, essentially?
Well, no, I'm not surprised. I wouldn't say that they were actually in charge of that building. I would just say that that's where they were supposed to be to observe a specific area within the venue to see if there was anything that was going to occur. So, in my opinion, the Secret Service is in charge of all of the location, inside and outside of the venue, to make sure that it's secure.
Do you know, because we've heard a few different things in terms of when there was an officer who was able to climb up on the roof for a second and see the shooter. Can you walk us through what you know about how that happened?
Well, at some point after the two snipers lost visual of the shooter, and then he was on that roof. In that time span, I don't know what the time frame exactly is, but I know because they had called in that this guy's suspicious. So these uniformed officers showed up. I think they were uniformed. I shouldn't say. These officers showed up looking for him, and I don't know how they knew he was up on the roof. But yes, he did crawl up. He was on another officer's shoulders, and he crawled up and saw the shooter. He turned. I don't know if he aimed at him or not, but when he did that, the officer, in natural reaction, kind of ducked down, and he ended up falling off of the other guy's shoulders. And I don't know if he was injured in that or not. But in my opinion, he's a hero. I mean, he distracted the guy enough. Who knows what he could have pulled off if he, could have been concentrating. Instead, just now he's distracting. He's, hey, they know I'm here.
What can you tell us about the communication breakdown? There were several Congress people here yesterday as part of the Homeland Security Committee who said that that there was not a local police officer in the room, the Secret Service Command Center, that had a radio that was able to keep everybody in touch.
So what I'm understanding is the Secret Service had their own radios, our local guys had their own radios, and the state police had their own radios, and they could not communicate with each other. They were attempting, I know that the individuals in that building saw the shooter 20 minutes before, had a photograph of him, had eyes on him, and radioed that in. And one of the local ESU guys was telling the command center verbally, because there was very little cell service also. I think they had cell service either shut down or there was so much cell service going on that they just couldn't get calls through. But there certainly was a breakdown in the communication between that, with not being able to talk to each other on the radios. To me, would be a serious issue.
Yeah, it just seems so basic.
You would think so.
And I think Americans watch this thinking, I mean, this is the Secret Service. Like, you would think they would come in and there would be a way for everybody to communicate.
I would have thought that myself.
I mean, you think the Secret Service is so advanced, and then you learn they were not even able to communicate with local law enforcement. They weren't able to tell each other what was going on. It's unbelievable. Okay, coming up next on this special report, what do we really know about the 20-year-old shooter who almost assassinated a former president and current candidate? His chilling Google search on the same day he bought a ticket to Trump's rally. And we're also tackling some of the conspiracy theories surrounding the shooting and what we just heard just within the last hour from the former president about his injury. We're coming right back after this, live from Butler.
We have criminals, we have drug dealers, we have people that just not be here.
On the roof.
He was spotted before he ever took a shot. We've talked about the mystery of how gunman Thomas Matthew Crooks was able to evade the Secret Service, but there's another mystery here. Who Thomas Matthew Crooks is and why he did this. No one seems to be able to answer the question of why and motive. It is still a big mystery, even 12 days out. Yes, of course, there's theories, which we're going to get to them in a couple of minutes. But law enforcement and family of Crooks have not said anything concrete about why Crooks wanted to kill Trump. Here is what we know so far about the 20-year-old. One of the biggest mysteries about the attempted assassination of Donald Trump continues to be the shooter, Thomas Matthew Crooks. Still no motive, but investigators are finding clues in his internet searches. We know he had pictures on his phone of former President Trump, President Joe Biden, and other officials, including Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Christopher Wray. And investigators say he looked up the dates for the Democratic National Convention, Trump's appearances, and other disturbing searches.
On July 6th, he did a Google search for, quote, how far away was Oswald from Kennedy? And so that's a search that obviously is significant in terms of his state of mind.
FBI Director Christopher Wray says July 6th, the day of that search, is the same day Crooks registered for the Butler, Pennsylvania rally where he shot former President Trump and 3 others in the crowd.
He was interested in public figures, kind of more broadly, and I think this is important, that starting somewhere around July 6th or so, he became very focused on former President Trump and this rally.
That focus turned into reconnaissance missions. He visited the fairgrounds 6 days before the rally. The 20-year-old worked at this nursing home washing dishes and serving and had no criminal record. He asked his bosses for July 13th off, the day of the shooting, and Crooks bought the ammo for the assault rifle from this gun store just a few miles from his house, also on the day of the shooting. And he flew a drone over the Butler Farm Show grounds before the rally. Remote control devices attached to homemade bombs were found in his car, but the bombs were left in the off position.
We've recovered 3 devices, 2 in his vehicle and 1 back in his residence. I would say these are relatively, again, keyword relatively crude devices themselves, but they did have the ability to be detonated remotely. There were receivers for those 2 explosive devices with the devices, and then on the shooter himself, when he was killed by law enforcement, he had a transmitter with him.
A senior congressional source told NewsNation Thomas Crooks had a major depressive disorder diagnosis. His high school classmates say he was a loner and made fun of for the way he dressed.
He was bullied, he was bullied so much. Never think this would happen to you, and this is happening to me. This is, I live here, and this is happening. It's so insane. You don't never know what the world's coming to nowadays.
A lot of people describe him as a loner. His list of contacts, for example, is very short, compared to what you would normally see from most people.
The FBI director at this point does not believe Crooks had an accomplice.
So far, underline, so far, we have not found any evidence of any accomplices or co-conspirators, foreign or domestic.
All right, so we know that Crooks came out here, scoped out the site, even had a drone. I want to show you with our NewsNation drone an aerial of the area. It's obviously too dark now to see anything, but we had the drone up before sunset. This is where the rally is. You can almost see the markings in the grass where the stage and grandstands were for President Trump's rally. Those red barns, that's the area that the Secret Service snipers were up on top of. And then this building just 400 feet away, there with the white roof, that is the building, the lower part that the gunman climbed up on top of. But notice today where you see the yellow fencing around the air conditioners there. That's new. We are told that the gunman actually used the AC units to climb up onto the building. And the initial reporting that he used a ladder to get up is inaccurate. We're told that he used those air conditioners to actually climb up. So that's new today. I want to try and get into the mind of the shooter now, though, also figure out what went wrong and how he went undetected. Let's bring in former Secret Service agent Paul Eckloff, who worked for the Secret Service for more than 2 decades. Paul, thank you for joining us. First of all, I just want to ask you, we've learned so little from police about the shooter, about motive. Based on what you know so far, what do you think the motivation could be?
The best way to get an indicator of what this potential assassin's motivations were or his mental state is to look at a history of shooters in America. We obviously can't interrogate a subject that was neutralized by the counter snipers. But if you look back at a history of mass shooters in public spaces, school shooters, people who commit mass violence, 25% had a diagnosed mental illness. But that's interesting because that's a very low number. In this case, it appears he was diagnosed with a major depressive disorder, but you tend to look at changes in behavior. As I examine this, and the Secret Service and the FBI both examine shooters in public spaces. The FBI does very detailed reports, and the FBI has the National Threat Assessment Center, where they have studied these past shootings. And what they find is, just as we can forensically look at the site and find where the errors were, what can be fixed, and how we can intervene and fix those, there are multiple opportunities to intervene in these cases with these mass shooters. We'll need to go back and draw a timeline of his behaviors, and certainly his internet searches are part of that. But there are delusional systems sometimes. There can be psychosis. But the problem is the majority of individuals who act on these have not been diagnosed with mental illness. They certainly exhibit it. 42% of historical mass shooters were bullied, which I think we know in this case. As I look at this, him researching assassins is definitely a sign. Absolutely. Researching past assassins is a sign, but as we know, America's fascinated with assassins.
Yeah, this has been, Paul, one of the hardest stories to report on because we've been hearing so many different things from different agencies. One story from the feds, one story from state police, one story from local law enforcement, even 12 days out. I mean, what's that about? It seems unusual. Usually the stories would start to come together, but they're almost getting farther apart.
This is really troubling to me, having been at these and planned these events. The public communications plan is part of any protective model. When we would travel with the president, we would visit the hospitals, do a walkthrough of any place he might be treated, whether that was surgical bays or recovery areas. But we also scouted out small auditoriums where the press could be gathered and briefed. If you look at mass shootings in the past, if you look in Uvalde, within 24 hours, the public was given who, what, why, when, where, and how. Within 24 hours, they knew the basic motivations of the shooters, they knew the movements, and they knew the story from the police. If you look at the shooting in Parkland, within 24 hours, we knew those same things. In this case, the Secret Service failed to show up for the initial press conference, and since then, to my knowledge, hasn't gathered with local and state law enforcement and offered a press conference. Nature abhors a vacuum. The public is seeking answers, and they deserve them. I would caution them to be patient. But it is a major failure, not only in this assassination attempt, but in getting communication out to the public to start filling these gaps, because where the federal government leaves the holes, people will fill with conspiracies and fear.
Yeah, it is frustrating, I think, for all Americans not to have any kind of information with an event of this magnitude. There's been a lot of interest in President Trump's injury. FBI Director Christopher Wray spoke about it yesterday. I want to play you a little bit of this, Paul.
With respect to former President Trump, there's some question about whether or not it's a bullet or shrapnel that hit his ear.
So just within the last 2 hours, former President Trump put a statement out on Truth Social addressing this. He said, "It was unfortunately a bullet that hit my ear and hit it hard. There was no glass. There was no shrapnel. The hospital called it a bullet wound to the ear, and that is what it was." I personally haven't understood why people are so obsessed with this. I mean, we saw the blood. The bullet came within half an inch or even a quarter of an inch of his head. But there does seem to be this focus on the injury, Paul.
I believe the focus on the injury is driven from politics, not from forensics. The idea that a bullet traveling at that speed would strike the teleprompter, striking a piece of glass in the same trajectory to hit his ear, is absurd and doesn't pass any test. You would have deflection. You would have the glass go somewhere else. You would also have broken glass. To my knowledge, and from looking at the videos, the teleprompters are unhit. From the angle of the shooter achieved on the roof of that building, I don't have any facts from the ground. I don't know why the bullet theory is not acceptable. I've seen recreations of the shooting. The red dot sight without magnification that the assassin used. The red dot is approximately the size of former President Trump. So when he's shot, it's going to go in that direction. I don't know how shrapnel would move in the exact same trajectory as a bullet. It doesn't hold water to me.
We only have about 30 seconds left, but I want to put up this diagram that you made, Paul, because I found it fascinating. I've never seen anything like it. It shows all the different vantage points that Trump could have been shot from. We focus on that one building, but there's a number. I've seen them. There's a number of buildings around here, very, very close to where that stage was. And you look at this graphic you created. I just stand here wondering, like, What was the Secret Service thinking? How was the perimeter not bigger? How was this an appropriate venue? There were so many ways that he could have been injured, it seems like.
Well, as I look at it, and this took me about 30 minutes with open source online tools. 3D model, you can move around and maneuver, and you can use relatively accurate GPS verified measuring tools. The initial failure in what will be seen as what is the cause of this is that the Secret Service accepted the risk in this case, or they decided that this could be protected. Now, I will say the Secret Service doesn't get a choice of what they protect. Those lines of sight that you see identified are out to 500 yards. The Secret Service has to control within 1,000 yards for counter-sniper, and that's 0.6 of a mile. You can't magnetometer 0.6 of a mile. I think what we should learn from this is the Secret Service should have more power in the relationships with staff to say no, that we cannot do this. That building should have been secured, and these arguments that may be coming out, it was the Secret Service's fault. They accept that, and they are moving forward today to try to correct this.
Yeah, and it seems like he's now going to move to indoor rallies, so that'll hopefully help. We appreciate it, Paul. Thank you for coming on. Still to come, everybody's so focused on the attempted assassination on Trump, but there is a community here grieving. We've been here. We've seen it for weeks. More on that, and we've got a brand new update on one of the victims. That's coming up next. Welcome back. This was the scene in a small town right outside of Butler. More than 100 emergency vehicles from all over the region paying respect to Corey Comparator, the father and former fire chief who died trying to protect his family. As for the other two victims, James Koppenhaver is still in the hospital tonight in serious condition, and NewsNation has learned that David Dutch was just discharged from the hospital. He is hopefully going to be doing well. Lives here in Pennsylvania that will be changed forever. For now, we have to wait on the FBI to conduct their full investigation. We can promise we will not stop putting pressure on them to be transparent. We won't stop digging for the truth. Here in Butler, Pennsylvania, we will keep talking to our sources every single day. And if you are a whistleblower watching this report tonight, know that you can come to us, you can trust us, and we will continue to put pressure on the authorities. I'm Brian Ensign. Thank you for watching. Good night.
Hey, thank you for watching. Please go to newsnationnow.com, newsnationnow.com, and you can find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button down below. Then you will get more of NewsNation's fact-driven coverage.